Boy, lots is going on, lots of bills that you've been tracking, and then certainly some new ones. And many of you have been participating with your respective local government groups on many of these issues. So our thinking in terms of just tackling the volume today was to go through by topic area. And then, of course, if there's something that we didn't touch on or that you wanted to ask, we certainly will remain available for that as well. So the first area we wanted to chat about was housing. And as you know, the Transit-Oriented Community Bill, House Bill 1313, was heard in its first committee about 2 weeks ago now, with our staff, Danae and Anna, testifying on some of the technical aspects of it. And then it went through just last week, a second committee. It went through House Finance Committee, and that was joined by an effort on behalf of the local government community, Broomfield included, to offer an amendment that would have taken out the HUTF funding hammer, the withhold of HUTF if a jurisdiction had not met their housing opportunity goal or their HOG. Lots of, again, very robust debate about that. And going into the committee, it was felt that the votes were there to make that happen. But after what we understand was a strong commitment from the sponsors and the governor's office directly to Representative Snyder, that, we will get this issue addressed later in the process. Rep. Snyder withdrew his support for that amendment, and it failed. So the bill is continuing with one of the major concerns that Broomfield had, and that along with some other concerns that we have. But that piece of it was probably the most talked about in committee, and it remains in the bill as of today, the status today. Next, and I will also share that the local government coalition continues to meet. Again, your team is very involved in those discussions to just talk through, how to continue working with the sponsors in the governor's office, but also, strategically try to get some of these very onerous pieces out of the bill and come to a place where we're more comfortable for it in terms of its impacts on Broomfield.
And Ruth, let me just add on that really quick, just for council's reference. So that meeting that Ruth is talking about, we had last Friday. I had spoke with CML, and being able to sit in the city and the county realm is really helpful because we hear different points on 1313 at each table and trying to kind of bridge it. And I told Heather, our most powerful voice is all of us working together because we agree on 80% of the bill. Our concerns are the same, right? And so we kind of started to fall apart, it felt like, or become fractured. And it is really nice to see that we've reinvigorated those again last Friday to really say, hold on, we can have these different conversations, and we're most powerful if we can all stick together. And right now we all still have the same core issues with this bill. So that's been pretty cool to see. I think there's not a lot of bills where that happens. I don't know if we will become fractured as this continues down the path, but as of right now, as Ruth said, with nothing being really amended to the substance that we've all asked for, we're all still in this together, which is pretty neat to see. So we'll see where that goes, but wanted to give a little more context to that conversation. And it included, just for reference, Metro Mayor's Caucus, CCAT, CCI, and CML, as well as a couple of us from our different jurisdictions. So that's who's at the table with those conversations.
And Dr. Cog was also there too.
Oh, and Dr. Cog. Yes, thank you.
So a really strong showing from the, local government communities. And as you said, Danae, I think everybody is really understanding that, we're best hanging together, and let's keep doing that. In terms of where the bill stands, it is currently waiting in House appropriations, and the budget is really being debated on the floor of the House as we speak. I'm not sure if they finished, but they were doing the budget on third reading this morning. That will pass, and then it will move over to the Senate, freeing up the calendars in the House. And so given, again, this is a priority bill for the administration and for House leadership, we do assume that it's going to move very quickly through appropriations. Remind you that there is the $35 million placeholder in the bill for the grants to support local governments in achieving the HOG, as well as some tax credits. So there's money in the bill that has been accounted for in the governor's budget and in the budget that just is going to be passing the House. So that will, we assume, move through House appropriations, and then the focus will be on the floor of the House, probably later this week. And again, the local government group talked about, the reality is probably not going to get a lot on the House floor. Looking at the votes there in terms of our concerns, there's not a lot of room to move, but the desire to make sure we're raising the concerns, having people who do agree with us talk about it, offer amendments, make sure that there's a presence around the challenges associated with the bill. And then as it moves to the Senate, really that is where we, have some focus on trying to very much amend this in a substantial way. And I'll also remind you that we have already met in advance of it even being introduced with Senator Faith Winter, who's one of the prime sponsors, as well as Senator Chris Hansen. So, we continue to say to them, hey, we're going to need to, frankly, have you really help us out here on the Senate side. And both have been very open to continuing that discussion. Ooh, excuse me there. Anything else on 1313, Danae? I know you've also been very involved in a couple of conversations I haven't. So
the Metro Mayor's Caucus just submitted our letter of oppose unless amended to the legislature on 1313.
No. Okay.
Will you share that, Guyleen? If you can, I didn't see it come through. I'd love to read it if you don't mind forwarding it.
Yeah, I'll forward it to you.
All right, so that's 1313. Then we've got our two strategic growth bills, Senate Bill 174, which is coming from the Municipal League, and Senate Bill 1366, which is coming more from the environmental community, Cocoa and Sweet. So these two bills, in theory, they could go forward independent of one another, but obviously that's a lot to be asking of our local governments. And so I think we are all trying to figure out, how do they relate to one another? Can they be done in tandem? Are there conflicts? And with respect to 174, the CML bill, that is up tomorrow in committee, and they've been, of course, super open to input from other local government groups. We do expect quite a few amendments to come on that. Julia, if you want to touch on some of those for folks, or I don't know, Danae, if we have the time or want to do that. I do know there's ongoing efforts to analyze. CCAT is actually spearheading let's look at both these bills, see what they both do, and figure out, are they working together or not? So Danae or Julia, I don't know if either of you want to comment on that attempt to reconcile.
Yeah, I'll be interested if they can reconcile. To be honest, I think they have very different focuses and initiatives, and based on the conversations with the two different sponsors, I don't see it coming into one reconciled bill. But for council's awareness, 174, the direction for amendment on that was to, as you all know, it requested the housing needs study, and then there was the for regional, state, and local requirements. And as Broomfield has already done a lot of that work in the last 2 years, we are hoping that they can recognize those efforts to not be duplicative. So I've had conversations with Heather Stauffer at CML heavily over the last few weeks to work on that. It's on their radar. I believe Councilmember Lim also brought it up through CC4CA's conversation. I saw it on their amendment list as well. So we're pushing that through all of our different membership channels. So more to come. And the other thing I would just ask Ruth on so I know we're talking about the CML bill, but with the two moving at the same time with hearings in different committees and different chambers on the same day, we'll continue to watch. But when we did the same thing, we did the nexus and looked at them together, and don't see a lot of overlap as currently written. And the one thing I want to mention is we've heard rumors that there's a full strike below for the Froelich bill. And I know Ruth has been told from the sponsors that's not true. So I think right now we're just trying to get through the noise and actually figure out what's happening. And I'm excited for a first committee hearing, because we'll actually see if something translates into actual change. So right now rumors are just flying all over. So I think the day for both of them in their first committee hearing will be telling for all of us.
And yeah, Danae, I think the only thing to note for 174, I already talked to Bev with CML this morning, and they're drafting kind of a sea of amendments that are hopefully going to be available today to review before it's up tomorrow. Hoping that at least gets on Broomfield's concerns. I know CCAT's got concerns. And I think CCI maybe hasn't chatted about this one yet. So, but they've been great partners and really open to making adjustments to make the bill work. So yeah, TBD on how or if anyone's going to have a kumbaya between these two bills. I think that's really still up in the air. But hopefully everybody starts playing a little bit nicer in the sandbox. We will see.
Yeah. And so again, 174, we will report out on those amendments after tomorrow's hearing. And then 1366, as Danae said, it very much still seems like a work in progress. If not an actual strike below, which is a complete rewrite of the bill, we do understand it's going to be amended significantly. So again, as Danae said, once the dust settles on those and we have actual language to share, we will pass that on. Moving on then, unless there's, I'm sorry, any questions about the strategic growth planning bills, plural. Okay, I'll go ahead then and keep going here. House Bill 1107 is another housing bill sponsored by our own Representative Lindstedt and Senator Winter. This is the judicial review of land use and trying to prevent interruption from a judicial action when local governments make land use decisions. This is already all the way through the House and is pending in the Senate. It actually will be heard on the 10th of April. And so again, it is Senator Winter. We might want to consider having testimony on this one. We do support it. And that's 1:30 in the afternoon. Then House Bill 1175 is the right of first refusal redo. It is the local government rights to property, essentially allowing, giving local government notice that there is a property with a bit of time for them to respond. There's a property that's up for sale that they could use for affordable housing. This one is already all the way through the House and is, I'm sorry, forgive me, I misspeak. It's pending second reading in the House. And again, once they get the budget out of there, we'll see a lot more of these bills start moving through the House. So probably that one's coming up later this week. If you'll recall, its predecessor, the right to first refusal, was vetoed last year, but a lot of work has been done with the administration, and this one comes into the process with acceptable provisions to the governor's office. So that is 1175. Moving then to construction defect. We've got, as you know, 3 bills in motion in this space. Senate Bill 106 did pass out of its committee, first committee, with a couple of amendments that we were following. One was an exemption for local governments to the provisions of the bill. That was passed. Another one raised the threshold for an HOA to pursue a suit from 50 simple majority, 51%, to 60%. The bill's introduced raised it to 67%. The amendment brought it down to 60%, but it was of those present. So, or those voting, I should say. So, if you have 100 members and only 50 of them voted, it would need to be 60% of the 50 who voted. So those 2 amendments were secured. We understand there still remains some opposition from the Build Our Homes Right coalition to the provision that, from their perspective, does not allow for people to actually pursue suit on the underlying cause of damage, but rather limits their ability to sue only on the work that's been done to remedy. So we know this one will have more debate, I guess, is what that means. But it is, I think, on the floor of the Senate this morning, is what we understood.
Yeah, laid over to tomorrow.
Laid over till tomorrow. So this one we may have, more time to see where it lands. Any questions on Senate Bill 106 or comments, input? I know, again, many of you are following this from different perspectives as well. Okay, so then in tandem with Senate Bill 106 moving forward, there is a couple of bills on the House side that also deal with construction defect reform. One of them is 1083, and this is a study of the underlying insurance that is provided for developers doing construction of these middle housing projects. That one has went through its first committee. It is sitting in House Appropriations. And again, we assume those bills are going to start moving now that the budget is out of there. It doesn't have a huge fiscal note. And in fact, it seems like it is it's a $300,000 cash fund, but then that's offset by a $300,000 general fund. So in terms of the cost of this study, it seems like it's a wash. And there does seem to be support in the House to move this bill forward. We just have Broomfield's just monitoring this in terms of context on the other bills that we're watching. And I should have said, reminder that we're in an amend on 106. And then the final bill in this space is House Bill 1230. This I've been calling the Consumer Protection Bill because it sits in the Consumer Protection Code, part of our statute. This one, you'll remember, it extends the statute of limitations, does several other things that are aimed giving people more rights in terms of remedying their construction issues. This one has made it already through the first committee and is pending second reading on the House floor. So there's no cost associated with this. It's just more statutory changes. Again, we think this one's probably going to have a much harder ride in the Senate. Once it comes over to the Senate, it'll be more heavily scrutinized than it has been in the House. And there is opposition to this one, a real concern that it does the opposite of what 106 is trying to do. And that is, the argument is it's opening up the ability for people to sue, which is the very problem we're having that's driving insurance costs up. So those are the construction defect bills.
It's not only insurers cost, it's the lack of insurers. I don't think people realize that. In talking to our development partners in the community, there's only 1 or 2 companies left that will insure these for sale products. So that's why the cost is high, because the litigious environment has created this aversion to risk. So it's compounded by the fact that the cost of insurance is because there's only 1 or 2 providers left in the state. And I don't know how much worse it has to get, because it looks like we're going to be stuck in the rental trap with so many people opposing a path forward to for sale products, which I can count on one hand how many we've had since I've been on council since 2017. And so I know that the study bill is supported by CCAT, and I'm not going to oppose that, but why didn't they do a study before? This problem didn't just start. We've been in this cycle of no for sale condos for at least a decade. And now we're going to do a study because there's a remedy. I mean, I don't know. And then there's the forces working against Home Opportunity Alliance too. There's the Build Our Homes Right folks, which are really the trial lawyers who have the most to lose. And we all know when you don't want to deal with something, turn it into a study like the Senate did last year with 213. So I'm just calling this one like I see it. And I'm getting more detached from outcomes, Ruth and gang, because I don't think what we say matters. I think their minds are made up. And if you push too hard, you get accused of abusing them. So I'm not pushing. I'm not testifying. I'm just going to oppose what I'm going to oppose. And I don't think they're listening, because I definitely didn't feel heard from our own representatives at all. So I won't be fighting for anything else they want. But y'all can.
Yeah, I think, Mayor, how these bills, if they're going to come together, or how, it's challenging. I think, 106 has a real challenge on if not the Senate side, certainly on the House side. And likewise, these other bills have a tough challenge coming into the Senate. So, and then in the meantime, we still seem to have this problem. So, we'll keep you posted, and hopefully everybody can say, hey, we really should maybe talk to one another and try to figure something out. But maybe that's a little too Pollyanna of me to think that might happen. So those are construction defect. That's what we had for you on the housing front. Is there anything I missed, Danae, or anything else you wanted to add on housing? Okay, we'll go ahead then and move to another very busy area, transportation. The long-awaited rail bill did was introduced, Senate Bill 184. And this deals with Front Range passenger rail, mountain rail, bus staying, everything. It is out of its first committee already, and again, a very strong showing of local governments, saying generally we like this idea, but we've got some real concerns around what's happening with the existing fees associated with various corridors and the future of them in terms of staying in that corridor for the purposes they were intended. Your own staff, Danae and Sarah Grant, have been so helpful in terms of really looking at the bill's technicalities and providing feedback. Danae and Sarah participated in a meeting that CCAT hosted with President Fenberg last Friday, I believe it was. The days are all melding together. No, it was Thursday. And what they said is they don't necessarily agree with our concerns around the bill taking away revenue or potentially taking away revenue from existing corridors, but they're open to getting language that would make us more comfortable around that point. And I don't know, Danae, if you would add anything there, any other level of detail.
The only other thing I would add, and Sarah's on the call as well, so Sarah, please jump in. I think it's a nice thing the mountain towns on the 70 corridor are saying the exact same thing as the metro region, which doesn't happen often.
Yeah.
So there's power there in us coordinating and collaborating. So we're working on some suggested amendment language, and the meeting on Thursday last week was helpful because Lisa Kaufman was also on the call, and essentially, right, all the same concern was being stated again from a commissioner up in Eagle County, and then Sarah Grant sharing it for the metro area. And they said that legally the nexus isn't there for them to use those funds anyway, and the bill doesn't even contemplate that. And we said, great, then let's just have a nice compromise and just put the language in the bill. If you already agree that you can't touch our money, then let's just put the language in. And then we got some pushback. So that's kind of been where we've been trying to say, okay, if you think already you can't do it, we don't have the confidence in that. So let's just put it in the bill so that we can make it clear. So that's kind of the approach we're taking right now. And Sarah had some really good technical language actually, and is working on moving that through. Sarah, would you add anything else to that?
I think you covered it great, Danae and Ruth. Thank you.
Awesome. So a lot more to come on that bill, but we're trying to work with those metro or those mountain communities as well to leverage that voice.
Great. In this one, again, we'll have to go through Finance Committee and Appropriations and then to second reading. So it has a ways to go, but and again, the Senate's going to be dealing with the budget this week, but we're working on getting that language as fast as we can so that this issue can be resolved very early in the bill's process, and then we can proceed. Anything else on that rail bill, Senate Bill 184? Okay, well, I also would just share that we are expecting any day now a bill to be introduced regarding mountain rail and essentially allowing for tax credits for investments in that mountain rail corridor. So again, that's from Union Station all the way up to Craig and Hayden, and it's around just transition is what they call it. Helping communities get out of old industries like coal into new economic opportunities. That's part of it's the whole economic development effort for that entire corridor. And so just expect that bill will be introduced soon. It does not affect Broomfield, but it's obviously a part of this larger conversation around rail in general and transit across the state. All right, then moving into yet another juicy subject, and that is RTD reform. So our own senators, Senator Winter and Representative Lindstedt, are sponsoring this bill. They have given us several weeks ago, like big picture, here's the concepts. I heard a lot of input on, the board restructure and how that was not adequate in terms of actually having jurisdictional representation on that board. So they have reworked it, and you know, I think that your staff is providing input on that. It's certainly better than it was. Staff provided several other comments that Senator Winter said, thank you so much. I want to meet and talk about these in more detail. We did that on our own to both of those folks, Senator Winter and Representative Lindstedt, and then we also did it through Northwest MCC for that sense of consistency and having more than just one group talk about these issues. The bill has not been introduced, but we expect that it will be soon, which means we're going to need to make amendments rather than, you know, modify the bill before introduction. Yeah, Danae and Sarah, I don't know. Again, I'll let you guys have the floor on this as well.
I'll let Sarah talk about the technical pieces of this bill, but Council, just as a reminder, we emailed an email out last Wednesday, I believe, on this, and we'll follow up with Senator Winter and Rep. Lindstedt to meet with them to discuss. I think the piece for me that was shocking was just the reference back to the House Bill 1313 TOC definitions. That wasn't something I saw on the fact sheets. I should have known it was coming, but didn't actually see that until we got the bill last week, or the draft bill last Wednesday. So that's a piece for us. We obviously need to be looking at how these come together and looking at where council is on 1313 and then where we are on this bill and how they come together. So a lot more to come there. And Sarah, if you want to just give any more information on the technical side of the bill.
Thanks, Danae. And I believe these notes were shared out previously, but concerns around the RTD board reform. The main point there is that actually the RTD Accountability Committee recommended 2021 a study of the RTD board to define if there were any issues, if at all, with the RTD board. And it's a bit concerning that that some pretty significant changes are being proposed to the board without really understanding what the problems are or how to resolve them. So that was one of the big concerns. And additionally, in terms of the accountability and budget transparency that they proposed, we've asked some questions around what involvement RTD, meaning the board or executive leadership, has had any input to providing in this draft bill. Similarly with DRCOG, it's asking DRCOG to do some studies and planning efforts in a pretty short amount of time. We have some concerns around the timelines to do these studies, and it's not really clear how this would be different than recent studies that RTD has spent millions of dollars on. So would really like to know some more information about DRCOG's involvement. And so those are some of the highlights there, and I believe some of the notes have been shared around about Broomfield staff's concerns with the bill as drafted.
And again, Senator Winter responded right away and said, you know, thank you, and let's get some time on the books to talk this through. So haven't seen anything come through today, so might want to just follow up on that and get that on the books with her and Representative Lindstedt.
Has she ever amended anything that we asked her to?
Yes, I think that, you know, again, we did not end up, one example that comes immediately to mind is we didn't end up taking a position on vulnerable road users, but the input that we gave through MCC and others was taken almost verbatim. You know, I hope that's an example of good faith for faith, but you know, at least her reaction to our input was, you know, I think she said super helpful. Let's meet. So
that was the first time I've seen her reply to something too. At least in my, you know, that I was included.
Well, we're going to strike while the iron's hot and get that on the books right away. And yeah, like I said, I hadn't seen, she said our staff can help, but we'll nudge that along sometimes instead of waiting for the aides. So to your point, not letting it sit, let's get on it. That was what we had for transportation. Anything else, Danae, that I didn't touch on? Nope. Okay. So then we'll move to human services. And I don't know, Julia, if you wanted to speak about these, or would you like for me to? High acuity beds and system of care.
Totally up to you. I'm happy to take what I know and you guys can fill in, since I know you've got several other clients in kind of bigger places of interest. I think big high level things are that at least for the system of care bill, how do I put this
Senate
out?
Bill 59.
Yeah,
It's the
we
CCI.
always, yeah, you go ahead, Ruth, you go ahead.
I'm sorry. I
No,
feel like I
no.
was looking at you all, so I wanted to give you a chance to hear somebody else. A Senate bill, so let me first start with the high acuity bill. This is 1038, and again, Broomfield supports both these bills. We support 1038 as, we understand that kids get stuck in the child welfare system. They've got multiple behavioral health issues going on, and there's not a place for them to exit very intense hospitalization to go to in the community. That's the focus of this bill, is to create more capacity in the community for kids that need this sort of high level care. There is a $26 million placeholder that's been put in the budget since the Legislative Interim Committee on Child Welfare. It remains there. So this bill, it should be in good shape. It's the money is there for it, and it should start moving as soon as the budget, again, passes out of the House. It should begin moving through the House to the Senate. So this one is just, everybody's in agreement on it. It's in I think, a very good place. The System of Care bill, Senate Bill 59, is a bit of a rougher ride. You will remember this one came from CCI and the Human Service Directors Association, really to say, there's so many issues from A to Z with the way we're taking care of kids who have complex behavioral health needs. And we need to completely overhaul this and do some major reforms. So this bill came out of the Child Welfare Interim Committee. The administration put a $3 billion fiscal note on it. Am I right? Or was it $1 billion? It was only $1 billion. Sorry. With a B, billion. And of course, with that, Senator Kirkmeyer is nothing if not tenacious. She has been just working incredibly hard to do cross-referencing of the original fiscal note with what the Human Service departments already do, and working with legislative council staff to push back on some of those assumptions done by the administration. And the result was a significantly lowered fiscal note of around 600 million, but that's not, that's still pretty substantial. So 300 million in the first out year, and then another 300 million. But in terms of it actually getting off the ground for next year, the cost is now down to 2.3 million. And Senator Kirkmeyer, with her work on the Joint Budget Committee, was able to secure money in the budget for that 2.3 million. I would call it seed money. I mean, it's to get the system up and going. It's not to fund the services, but it's to get the system going. So that is in the budget. The administration still has tremendous concerns with the bill. They really, look at that $300 million fiscal note for a couple of years out, and it causes them a lot of consternation. As such, it just feels like there continues to be this real tension between the department, the administration, and then the groups like us that are supporting this bill. It's unclear if there's a plan for compromises or negotiations on this one. You all might know a little bit more through your human service networks, but this one is, I guess, I'd say in a holding pattern. Any other comments or input, feedback on that one?
Ruth, this is Dan Casey, the Director of Human Services here. I think you did a great job. The system of care is huge. It's a big thing that will take probably multiple years to get off the ground. I think this was a good, this isn't the first time they've tried this, but I think this was better received this year and hopefully helps us in the future years. But I mean, that system of care is huge. It's BHA and youth services and child welfare and mental health systems. And there's a lot to it. So I know that that one we'll have to be patient on. I think the high acuity is great that one's moving forward, because that's the real time right now problem that we're having. But no, I think you did a great job of summarizing those. I don't have really anything else to add.
Well, again, we'll continue to watch, particularly the system of care, both of them, but the system of care bill. And, these things sometimes take multiple years. Actually, the high acuity one, we represent Children's Hospital, you may remember, and you know, that one has been years of conversations about the problem. And finally, we're at a place where there's a bill. So, you know, you just keep working. And what I've been really pleased on with the System of Care bill is that the coalition has expanded. I mean, we really have a lot more stakeholders at the table saying this has to happen. So if not this year, although you know, my money's on Senator Kirkmeyer, that something will happen. She has been, I mean, when anybody sees her, please thank her, because she's just been tenacious and committed and clearly has the kids' best interests at heart here. She's working really hard. So those are the two human services bills. I also did just want to briefly give an update on local public health funding. So you recall this is one that we were working with CalPO on to secure. Their request was $12 million in unencumbered funds, so general fund for our local health agencies across the state. And they initially had 10 million. It expired. The administration came back and asked for just 7 million. They countered and said, you know, what we really need is 12, because if you look at the 10 we're losing and add inflation, we really need around 12. The Joint Budget Committee granted that early in figure setting. They said, we agree. Our local public health agencies have been through, frankly, hell and back with COVID and everything else they're trying to do. And this is a priority for us. So they did provide 12 million in funding. However, the March revenue forecast came. We were short about $170 million in terms of what had already been budgeted versus what the state had. And so they ended up having to go back and make some decisions. This one, they only shaved by $1 million. So local public health agencies will still get 11 million in unencumbered general fund. So, you know, we expect that's going to hold through the rest of the budget process. So, you know, in my mind, given what it could have been, this is a very good place to land. So I'm not sure if our health department's on the line, but oh yeah, there you are.
Hi, Ruth. Yeah. Jason Balling, Director of Public Health. And yes, you summarized it really well. It's something that's needed across the entire public health system. And in Broomfield, it will help us continue to do those core services and capabilities with flexible funding that a lot of times we're not able to achieve, given all the categorical funding we receive through federal pass downs and et cetera through CDPHE. So excited about this. And we were concerned when we heard about the revenue forecast, what that would look like, but to end up at 11 million is good for the public health system. So thanks.
Yes, thank you, Jason. And again, Jason submitted a letter specifically for Broomfield, and we're part of a broader effort to lobby the JBC. It's really clear they do appreciate the work of the local public health agencies. And I suspect that will only continue as, you know, with this JBC in their tenure. So excellent work. All right, that brings us to ozone and air quality. And I am going to turn it over to Austin.
Well, there's 3 ozone and air quality bills that are currently being discussed. Is House Bill 1330, Senate Bill 165, and Senate Bill 166. You may remember Councilmember Lim testified on 165 and 166 in their first committees of reference. These bills are being heavily against the industry is heavily going out against these bills and are basically, you know, as Senator Winter mentioned at our legislative dinner, that, you know, they're claiming that thousands of jobs will be cut because of these bills. And she kind of went through like why that isn't necessarily the case. And, you know, that it's not only is it not losing jobs, but it's going to possibly create other jobs in green industries as well. And so that being said, these bills do have quite the fiscal note attached to them. So 1330 has $3.9 million general fund, 165 has $1.4 million general fund, and 166 has 18 million general fund. So as they currently are, they have all been sent to their chamber's respective finance committees and are essentially just waiting for a date to be heard in finance. The coalition, Ozone Coalition, has actually been able to start working with the governor's administration on this to talk through a lot of the issues that the governor has with these, thinking they're a little too restrictive in some areas. They are also working with the fiscal analysts to try to bring down those fiscal notes because they think that a lot of the numbers in it are actually inflated or double counting, and so it's not actually going to cost nearly as much as they say it is. One issue that they wanted to flag last meeting is that the oil and gas industry does actually have ballot measures coming up for this upcoming election year, and those ballot measures are essentially verbatim the texts of the bills. And the reason, why would oil and gas industry put up ballot measures to regulate themselves? Well, the reason why is because they want to have the title board say that these bills aren't falling under the single subject. And so then that gives them basically the power and energy to lobby against this bill, saying, well, these bills, or at least have some precedent for litigation against these bills if they do pass, saying that they don't even follow the single subject of in our Constitution. So
the preemptive.
Yeah. The preemptive attack on these bills. So they're currently working through possible amendments to curtail the fiscal notes, as well as working with the fiscal analysts to get more accurate read of what it actually would cost the state versus what the state's initial thoughts were.
I think the big thing I would just add on these ozone bills, so we'll continue to monitor, we'll continue to leverage the membership voices, but the chamber, so the Denver Metro Chamber, as well as our chamber, I believe is reviewing. I think if you were at the dinner, you heard Pat Monticelli ask about, from Senator Winter, her stand on those, since she was on the interim ledge committee. I think their policy group is kind of sending those around right now, which is interesting. So we'll see more. But I think, as Austin said, there will be more opponents as we kind of move through there's a lot of hurdles still to come. So we'll see where it goes, but we'll actively continue to monitor and really work with CC4CA, since that's in their realm of expertise as well.
And then I would just also add that I'm saying extreme air quotes here. There was a bill by Senator Juarez Lewis and Senator Priola that I think was kind of a dream list of everything in terms of regulation that maybe, the environmental community wanted. The group that's bringing these three bills forward didn't see that as realistic. It did in fact die in committee last week. So, that was out there too, but it's no longer moving forward. Any questions on the ozone bills? Okay. All right. We'll move then to pipeline safety, House Bill 1357, another bill that we've been very involved in on the staff level and helping to draft it. And also, I'm just trying to see there's Pat. And then also, of course, Council Member Anderson testified in support of it last week or the week before, the week before. This one is also receiving some pushback from the administration, who has wanted some amendments. They are concerned that it's duplicative, if not sort of overstepping the boundaries of the current regulatory structure. So with the sponsors, this is sponsored by Representatives Tammy Story and Kyle Brown. They are waiting on amendment language from the administration, and they're shopping that with those supporters of the bill. And so we understand it's not been rescheduled, but that's the process that's going on. So the next hearing will be for action only to consider those amendments. So as soon as we get anything, and maybe you all will as well, I know that you're sometimes more connected on those technical levels than we are. So just know that's the status of the pipeline safety bill. And yeah, Pat, I don't know if you have any other updates than I did.
I don't. Thank you, Ruth.
All right, well, we will cross our fingers that the administration comes back with something reasonable that we can work with, and that this bill that's so important for the safety of our constituents, that we will see it continue its way through the process. Okay, forced pooling. Julia, can I put you on the spot for this one? 185?
Yes. So quick update on this one, and Jean still on? No. Councilmember Lim volunteered to testify on this one this week, which is super exciting. So kudos to Jean, who I just want to give a shout out to in general, has been a heavy hitter in terms of the oil and gas and environmental justice bills this year. So appreciate her and staff for going out of the way to make sure we have folks in hearings where it's making a lot of difference to have somebody actually there to testify. This one's going to be up for its first hearing on Wednesday upon adjournment. And just kind of a quick reminder, this one's coming from Senate President Fenberg and then Representative Amable. Basically looking at how force pooling works and adjusting current law that allows the commission to order pooling that mineral rights have to keep track of. So it's technical in nature, but important in terms of what it'll do for mineral rights in the state. Another one that's sort of the typical players in support and in oppose. So industry is not terribly keen on this one. Broomfield's joining our usual partners kind of from the Ozone Coalition who are in support, the Sierra Club, CC4CA, CCAT is also on it, Northwest Council of Governments are all in support. And so far, the oil and gas folks are mostly in amend, not formally opposed, which is, you know, a happy accident perhaps with maybe they haven't filed yet, or maybe this one won't be quite as fussy as other ones in the oil and gas space this week. But given the sponsorship, not expecting it to have any huge hurdles with the administration or with either chamber. So it should move in theory relatively quickly, and we'll be keeping Councilmember Lim posted in hearing time since this one's upon adjournment on Wednesday. So hopefully 10 or 11 a.m. or so. Yeah, that's the quick skinny on this one because I know we're almost at time.
Oh gosh, okay, I'm sorry, I'll quickly go then through, I'm sorry, any questions on the force pooling bill? All right, I will move on then to 1372, which is a new bill for us. This deals with, it was introduced as a ban against prone restraint. And we took an amend position at last Tuesday's council meeting. Since that time, we have been working with CML and the chiefs of police. Our position was amend again. The bill is going to be amended substantially, and you know, this is good. I think there's still some pieces that we remain concerned about, but we're working on that with, again, Danae and the sheriff's office and trying to understand if the amendments meet our needs. And so I don't know how much in detail we want to get about that. It's pretty technical in the weeds, but yeah.
I think the big thing, and I'll look at Nancy, I don't know if Christina is on here or the chief is, so we're really leveraging through the chief of police associations with ANEA and with the sheriff association, and Christina has been providing counsel there, which has been amazing. We've been at the table for the beginning. I think what we did share, it's not a secret that there are, even with it being a strike below and major amendments, we still have concerns with the bill, even if it is completely passed with the strike below. So I anticipate that, again, after the hearing tomorrow, we'll revisit with Nancy, the chief, and Christina to decide if we need to come back for that stronger position, as we mentioned at the council meeting last week. Nancy, would you add anything else to that? Okay.
And just a reminder that the bill is up in committee, I believe, next week. Or is it even tomorrow? Let me just double check on that. So this one tomorrow. Thank you. I was already, it's like next week, this tomorrow. So, you know, we'll let you know where things land there. Do you know if we're having testimony today? Didn't know if we were. No, we're not. We're just going to work through our association. Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Schaaf, I see your hands up.
Thanks, Ruth. So with that, when you had mentioned that that's going to be heavily amended, do we have those amendments yet for the hearing tomorrow? And do we anticipate are these amendments coming from the sponsors, or are these amendments coming from outside the sponsors?
They are coming from the sponsors. Thank this great question. Again, the proponents of the bills, primarily the defense bar, they have been meeting, you know, quite regularly with CML, the Sheriff's Association, and have made quite a few concessions again, may not be where we need it to be, but it looks substantially different based on our input, and it is brought forward by it. So there'll be sponsor amendments. Again, it may need more work, but it's better than, I guess, where it was from everybody's perspective, but maybe not quite all the way there. Okay, so we'll keep reporting on this one. And then very quickly, Austin, can you tell us about concealed carry? And yeah.
Well, so concealed carry, which is 1174, at last council meeting, we changed from a support to an amendment position because the amendments that were in committee had the sheriff manage all of this, so it would put a lot of burden on our chief of police. And so we're, need to have to address that administrative burden. That has been introduced in the Senate and is awaiting a date for State Military and Veteran Affairs Committee to be heard.
So we can bring those concerns forward in committee. Well, I'll read beforehand. We'll try to, I'm sure it's not just us that's having these consternations around suddenly this unfunded mandate. So we will work with our various associations and get this one shopped a bit and see what can be done.
Ruth and Austin, just real quick, this is Nancy. That would be great. On that point of looking at others who might have consternation about this, we heard that there were some sheriffs that were in favor of this because they wanted that ability to control this, and there's a fee tied to it. So a little bit different information. I'm not sure if the fee will cover all the costs, and it's hard always to calculate the cost. So if you hear that some sheriffs are in support of this, if you could let us know, that would be great. Sorry, Councilmember Hinkle, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're fine. I just had a question. I was, not in that conversation last Tuesday because I was in California with my daughter. But I would like to know where the push was to move that locally, if it's a state requirement. We push things to the state and now they're shoving stuff back home. And so it's very frustrating for us as a city and county who supports concealed carry and this type of a bill. We didn't exactly discuss this a lot in length or in depth a lot last year, but we do support, more educational requirements for, and just standardized requirements for concealed carry. And so it's just very frustrating. So if you could pass that along, that, hey, Broomfield's had really in-depth talks and you guys said we can do things locally. And then we figured out locally, we really, really need to pump this back to the state, because the state needs to make sure that everything is covered within the state so that we don't have people in Broomfield going to Westminster to go get their concealed carry licenses different than other places. So stop punching it back to us and actually do something at the state level. And I really feel like that's important. And if we are going to standardize everything and we want more local control, I would like to hear, like what you said, Nancy, if there are sheriffs who want more local control over that, what the talk is about it and why I still don't understand why the pushback to local authorities, unless I don't know what the whole CBI thing, I don't know where the costs were, the fiscal notes, if that was the pushback or what. So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think we've dug in quite enough to understand that either, but we absolutely will. Especially we just maybe been triaging a little bit, and this one it's a little bit further out on the timeline, but we will reach out to various associations and get some answers to this, dig a little deeper, get back to you all.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. So then lastly, we would just say that we did take a position last week on regulating local regulation of idling, and that is already just flown through the House and is pending in the Senate committee today. So it seems to be well received by all. They want our local governments to say no idling. And so hopefully you'll hear us saying that one passed the process very soon. Then last but not least, and we probably need more time on this on another call, the Commission on Tax Reform, and I see Mayor Castriota had to hop off, I think. So as you know, she serves on the task force on property tax reform. So that committee has pretty much done its work. They're going to have one more meeting this Friday, and then they've already oh no, I'm sorry, I'm wrong, aren't I? They've done all their work. They've submitted the report.
They submitted the report before their March 15th deadline. They do have a meeting next on the 12th.
Okay. And that's to discuss a little bit more of their recommendations. So we've, I believe, sent out the recommendations to you all. We can do that if again, if that's helpful. The short of this is that we expect there will be a bill or two coming from this process, and we'll need to have Broomfield taking a look at that. Concerns around backfill to local governments, concerns around, what does this do to people in various situations relative to their ability to absorb property tax increases. CCAT had, I think, a very informative meeting with the Bell Policy Center last Friday, was it already? And, right now there's not really a local government coalition working together to talk about, the impacts that these various proposals could have, or the lack of any action could have. Meanwhile, we've got the proponents of these ballot measures out there being very active. We hear Senate Proposition 50 is losing some steam just because it's so draconian that even very conservative counties and county commissioners are saying this is bad, go away from this one. But there's other competing measures, and this is looking to be feels a little bit like special session. It feels a little bit like, if you may remember, we got the tax reform bill, 4 days before session adjourned last year. So we're hopeful that we have a little bit more of a runway, and really are going to need to lean on you all to do the review and provide direction on how we want to best engage on these. And Mayor Pro Tem Schaaf, I know you were involved in that meeting. I don't know if there's any comments you would want to share on these as well.
There isn't anything that I would add, so thank you for that.
So yeah, big TBD on these property tax bills. So that's the second act, evidently, of the session. And I think that's all we had for you, Danae. I hope we hit everything. And
yeah, I'm going to just quickly, there's just one I want to mention. I think Councilmember Lim, when she listens to the recording, will want to know about, which was House Bill 24-1362. It's the incentivized gray water use. And so just wanted to flag that for the group. I believe CC4CA recommended a support position on it. And let me hurry and just pull up my notes on it really quickly.
I don't know that we took a position, Broomfield.
No, we are not in a position. It's just one that I think is of interest since our memberships have taken it. And I just wanted to give a quick update from staff on that. So 1362, just for reference, is that our understanding is the Reg 86 currently allows local governments to opt into gray water control programs by ordinance or resolution. And Broomfield already did that in 2021 when you all passed Ordinance 2158, adopting the local control ordinance. So very time consuming. Most municipalities, we anticipate, will have to go through a lot of hurdles to comply with this bill, but Broomfield, once again, you guys have been ahead of that with the staff as well. So that is just an update on there. And thank you, Allison. It looks like they recommended support and they decided to monitor it. So just wanted to mention that one as it's coming up in circles. And then just a couple of housekeeping items. First is that we put in the email, there's a lot of hearings coming up this week and next week. So if there's anybody that would like to provide testimony, please email CMO crew so that we can help coordinate that either through Ruth and her team or through the membership organizations as needed. A reminder, we only have 2 formal legislative updates left for council. So there will be one at the April 9th council meeting and one at the April 23rd. And really what we'll do is have a memo go out with the agenda that just lists all of the bills of which council took a position on. These are kind of the deeper dives and hopefully where we've answered questions. So if there are still remaining questions, let us know. Otherwise, we'll just keep that space on those meetings for council to ask questions or take any positions as needed. We have one more virtual update after this one, which is on April 22nd. So again, at 12:30. And then, as we mentioned in the staff email last week, we will be scheduling a study session, and we did just book it for September. And our thought process is that we'll be able to really debrief what happened in the session, figure out impact to Broomfield and be able to summarize that, and then talk about if council wants to discuss the state legislative process as currently outlined in your rules and procedures. There will be the time to get that direction and still have enough action meetings to make those changes before we go into the 2025 session. So I just wanted to mention that to everyone so we're all on the same page. We will work with Aponte Busam to give a summary well in advance of that study session, but the deeper dive will be at that study session in September. So those were just the housekeeping items we wanted to mention. And thank you so much for your time. For the council members that are left on the call, any outstanding questions or legislation that we didn't cover?
I just had one, Danae. I know I missed last Tuesday and I'm still trying to play catch up. I know CCI was going to vote on the 1366. Did James bring that up on Tuesday or not? Okay.
He did. So council decided to take an amend position on 1366. And I did check in with Reagan at CCI. They're still in that pending position. They weren't able to get the votes figured out even with the special meeting. So we will continue to work on those amendments. And James did share that feedback at the council meeting on Tuesday.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Marsh-Holston, would you add anything to that? I don't want to put any words in your mouth.
Sorry, I didn't know you were on there.
No, I think that's right.
Okay. Any other ones, Heidi, that you missed that you wanted that we happy to?
No, just we have CCI next Thursday and Friday, and just kind of put that on our radar. If there's any sort of bills, they probably should release the agenda by Thursday or Friday of this week, I'm assuming, and we can kind of go through some of those that might be either new or sticky. Sometimes they just add in new bills that are just random. And, at CCI, it seems like it's a really important bill for almost half. And we need to make sure that we're working as a team to move the needle forward at CCI, because I feel like that's a harder boulder to push sometimes. And I just want to be prepared.
Sure. When I get those agendas, we'll do our scrub like we do and provide you with an updated spreadsheet as well. So thank you.
Those are great. And I just really thankful for those, Danae. I really appreciate all of that effort. And I'm just hoping that CCI will just get a little more organized.
Sure.
It seems like when we vote, it seems like there's like a double vote somewhere. So we just need to make sure that we're getting organized. And if we can't come to a consensus, we need to, figure out what an amend actually means for each county. I think it's a little hot mess right now, but hopefully we'll get more organized.
Yeah, and they're working hard. Staffing transitions have been hard, but I think Kelly is trying to get it more organized. So more to come, and just let us know. But yeah, happy to answer on those bills when we see the agenda shared out. Let's see, I think we still have James, Devin, and Lori. Any other bills that we didn't cover that you had questions about? Want to make sure you have that information before, since we won't do the deep dive next Tuesday.
Yeah, nothing for me.
Okay, thanks, Devin.
And I'm good as well, thank you.
Okay, wonderful. James, any for you?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Hopefully, again, us slowing down and being able to provide that space to ask those questions will help so that we don't have to do it at the council meetings, and we can keep them really just kind of high level. Will help everyone. And Ruth, Austin, I know Julia jumped off. Thank you for the time, and staff for jumping on. And we will get this shared out earlier than Friday for the council members that were unable to join. So great.
Thank you all.
Have a great week.
Bye-bye.